Global Crossing and other companies that build submarine fiber optic networks is that they build them from, say, Hollywood, Florida, which is right on the ocean, to a cable station. They build it to Puerto Viejo, right on the ocean, and South America, outside of Caracas. That sounds all good and well, but companies don't really want to go to cable stations alongside the ocean. They really want to go to the city centers. So as part of our expense, we build sonnet ring networks connecting the actual cities and put in telehouses or places to put equipment inside the city. So if you buy some capacity as a customer from us, you buy it from a POP, say from 60 Hudson in New York City, not from a cable station, all the way into Caracas, not to a cable station 40, 50 miles out of town. In the last 3 years, Global Crossing has invested $6 billion to build a Global Crossing network. The company has invested about $2 billion on telecom infrastructure projects in Latin America and the Caribbean. The Frontier merger adds the $1 billion North American Crossing Network, formerly the fiber optic Frontier Optronics Network, to the core network serving the Americas. And I think we did some maps that way. We also offer web hosting in global centers. We have like 14 global centers around the world. We're building some new ones in Mexico City, Buenos Aires, and Rio de Janeiro. These are places that have 24/7 availability, scalability, security, where companies can come in, put their own equipment to have web facilities, or they can use space in our provided web facilities. Some of our customers are Yahoo, Washington Post, Newsweek, Interactive, eToys, and I personally recently signed up America Online, and someone else signed up Yahoo. This just talks about our OC192. For those of you in the industry, we are going to OC192 backbones instead of OC48. So we're going to be offering you more than 4 times the speed, internet speed that you currently have. This just shows you a picture of one of our web hosting facilities. These are caged-in areas where customers can come in and put their equipment without having to have the real estate themselves. Now, this gives you an example of a telehouse or web hosting facility that a company could have here in your business park. I think this would be a great addition. Not only for research, for building websites, but there's a lot of interactive issues with the university that a web hosting facility could have. It's going to take someone that's going to want to put some fiber over to the cable station, pull that fiber over to their web hosting facility, have that facility, and hang the shingle out and say, okay, one, you can buy internet stuff from us, or you can come in and do telehousing here. If you want to put in a voice switch, or you can put in routers and be your own internet company or whatever. We've got the backup, the generators, the security, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be, I think, a real winning situation for the business partner. This just shows our global centers around the United States. Okay, we're going to redraw that map on the test. So talking about we have 80 billion hits per month in our global centers. We have more than 2 billion hits per day, nearly 2 million hits per minute, up to 250,000 browser downloads per day. And we do, at the time this was written, 60% of all internet searches, and I've been told it's up to 75% now. This is from Data Communications Magazine. There's only 1.6 million active internet users in 1998 in Latin America. You can see that it's supposed to grow exponential growth. This is talking about strategic locations in Latin America. If somebody built a web hosting facility here in the islands, that could be added to the map. One of the things that I started with in connection with a phone call from a guy at FIU, who told me about something called Internet 2, and that was about a year ago. Internet 2 is really IP6. It's a different protocol for different internet protocol that's used by universities for research and development, for telemedicine, for distance learning. It's a high-speed interconnect connection. It's also used to link supercomputers together. And so it turns out that there's this huge need for all the universities in the islands here, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Mexico, all throughout South America, to be connected to Internet 2 so that they could get research grants, so that they could do telemedicine, et cetera, access supercomputers. One of the things that I was able to do was to get Global Crossing from an incubation standpoint to help these universities across our region incubate those areas, is that I got Global Crossing to donate the use of a DS3 or 45 megabit channel to at least one university in each country, and from our point of presence, they'll have to come to us, and they'll get to use that for 3 years at no charge to incubate their business. After that, we're hoping to sell them capacity at a great discount, but that gives them 3 years to get some research grants going, to make things happen. And our company originally only wanted to do it for 1 year, and I said, well, most of these universities, some of these universities have never even asked for a research grant. They don't know where to start. You've got to give them more time than a year, so I got them to go for 3 years. We're not making the official announcements yet until we actually turn on these facilities in each geographic location, and then we'll make a big hoop to do about it. But everybody that's working with Internet 2, we're very active now in the Internet 2 organization and the conferences. And Rick Smith, one of my coworkers, has had the dubious pleasure of letting me hand off all of this to him, because it's turned out to be almost a full-time job, just administering the Internet 2 requests that we're getting. But we feel like that we're obviously working with the University of the Virgin Islands as well to get them the capacity so that they can go after research grants, maybe a supercomputer or whatever, working with other universities. Also, I think that using Internet 2, the way that the Caribbean is laid out, I think that you can use Internet 2 very nicely for distance learning. And there's some real opportunities for distance learning from the University of Puerto Rico that you could charge for others. One of the things that Internet 2 will provide, that we'll bring people in, we'll bring these universities into a gigapop in Florida, and they'll be transported up to the major gigapops in San Antonio, Chicago, and literally out to the rest of the world. This just shows the Internet 2 network that we're establishing for this region. It will include Mexico as a recent agreement. But you can see how critical St. Croix is for the provisioning of Internet 2. I'll give you an example of where Internet 2 is really important. Guy Cormier with the University of Puerto Rico, I don't know if some of you probably know that guy, but he was telling me, he says, they have this big radio telescope at Arecibo in Puerto Rico, and they literally have to get all of the data that it gathers. They put them on these huge tapes, and they're flown to some place to be analyzed. There's somebody who looks at it and scratches their head and says, no, we need to move that dish just a skosh more. So by the time all of that information gets back, sometimes it's too late to actually retarget the dish for the target that they want. With Internet 2 availability, they'll actually be able to do almost a real-time, during the night, looking at all of that data. They may be able to do it on-site and retarget and make much better use of that facility. And they'll probably do that at night. During the daytime, they'll use the Internet 2 for other things at the University of Puerto Rico. So we're going to see really neat things happening with Internet 2. In Argentina has a Cray 2 computer that they have not been able to use because they have no way of getting the data into and out of the computer in the region heretofore. this just shows you our topography of our network maps. This is the United States, and you can see by the little gray lines where we're connecting to our subsea cables. This is our Mid-Atlantic crossing network. We have two landings. We'll have two landings in St. Croix for the Mid-Atlantic crossing network. It goes to Miami via Hollywood. It goes to 60 Hudson via Brookhaven. And then it connects, it goes over to Europe on our AC1 network. You can see that St. Croix, we connect that to our Pan American crossing and our South American crossing cable. We're also bringing this Pan American crossing cable down from California into Tijuana, into Mazatlan, and then going to the three major cities in Mexico, into Panama City, and then out again. St. Croix is critical, and then coming down to Caracas via Puerto Viejo. I also was able to get the company to spend about $1 million for a branching unit just outside of El Salvador, so that when traffic dictates, we'll spend about somewhere between $25 and $40 million it's going to take to get a landing in El Salvador. This just shows you our Mexican crossing. This network is now complete. This is our South American crossing. This is going to be heating up. Probably 75% of it will be done in the next 2 quarters. We already have stacks of contracts where people want to get on this network. So I think that you'll see a lot of traffic coming out of South America, going back up to the western part of the United States via PAC, and onto Europe and the eastern part of the United States via MAC. This shows you our worldwide networks. I really didn't talk about going from our European networks. The one that says ATC2 is the world's first 2.5 terabit system. Very, very fast, very large cable system. We also have a substantial network throughout Europe, privately owned by us. We have a ring to Japan, and we have partners in a company in Japan and actually provide backhaul to Japan. And the thing that says EAC is East Asian Crossing, that's under construction with Microsoft and SoftBank. We just recently bought 49% of Hutchison Whampoa, the second largest operating telephone company in the Hong Kong area, and they have operating units now in some of the provinces of China. So, I can see that we're moving into Southeast Asia, and China on our networks. Obviously, what's really important is that anybody that connects to Global Crossing at a telehouse or somehow here in St. Croix, literally we are handing them the world, because they can connect in to really almost any place that they need to in the entire world.
Rick, just do me a favor. You mentioned in your talk the ring. Explain why you have 2 paths to everywhere you want to go.
Well, I will. The way this traffic works, it's like cars on a racetrack. If you cut the road off at one spot, the car can still continue going on or turn around and go back the other direction. In other words, if we had a cut in the cable system right here, we'd actually be sending the traffic back around this way or back around this way. It's an SDH ring. It's a sign ring. Anyway, the idea is if there's a cut in a cable someplace, unlike the old copper cables, it's not even going to be noticed by, unless you have like 2 cuts, not one cut, it could be a problem. It probably wouldn't even be noticed by one of our users. I know you knew the answer to that question. Any other questions about this?
No, I was just wanting you to emphasize the fact that you have design redundancy for reliability. So
we actually have competitors that are building cables, even in the Caribbean region, and it starts out with those binga, 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 and the only redundancy they have is they have an extra set of fibers in the same cable. When the guy with the big shrimp plow comes along or the anchor hits it, they're dead in the water until it's repaired. Sometimes that could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. So we've engineered ours at much greater expense to not have those situations. I will also say that I show, and when I talk about these things going into various cities, like this one here, where we're actually coming into a city. That is not just a line. We actually are building rings into those cities. We actually have redundant routes with a SDH network going into each city's POP. So that, again, if a guy with a backhoe digs it up and cuts the cable, that should be transparent to our users. Now, it's all hell's going to break loose in London when they're looking at that big panel. They're going to get somebody else to fix it, by the way. That's the way that works. Let's just show some dates. Talking about the Panama coming on 5/31. Buenos Aires, Sao Paulo, and Rio. We're looking at August and September. We're looking at July now for St. Croix. I think we said 6:30 and 00. That's the date for testing. We're ready for customer service in July. Let's just show some of the things that we offer to our worldwide customers. We're also going to be fielding something really kind of neat in the industry. It's called U-Command. And we will, if you're our customer, we will actually have networks already put in position, and you literally can get more capacity for your company with a free internet access tool. And you just go in there under your master agreement and says, okay, I need an extra 45 megabits between Miami and New York on the MAC cable. Literally, your assignments will come across, and you tell the people, or you have us do it, where you want the jumpers running. Bada boom, bada bang, you've got your capacity. What normally used to take 60 to 90 days, we're hoping to get it down to less than 2 weeks. Basically, that just shows you a little bit about our cable projects. We're very pleased to be in the Virgin Islands. We feel like we're going to be a very good neighbor, and we definitely want to be a good neighbor. I think many of you have had a lot of contacts with various people from Global Crossing, and everything from our legal team to our development people and sales people, et cetera, et cetera. We know that we're going to be expanding here in the islands, and we're even working on getting some connectivity amongst the islands in conjunction with some other telephone companies. So we're not ready to make any announcements there, but we feel like that's kind of important as well. Any questions? Yes, sir?
Given the last thing you just said earlier, you were talking about marketing distance learning. Our products are essentially asymmetric. There's a whole lot of traffic down, but we've got real problems in the last mile of people in the islands because of monopoly rates,
I'm sorry, sir.
Our position is that cable and wireless in the Caribbean region, where we hope to market distance learning, basically is charging rates that the students can't afford. I've got students in Grenada that are paying $300-400 a month. It's an asymmetric load, mostly coming from us. Doesn't have to come from us, could be yours. You just said that there is a planning hope that maybe you can see. Your plans right now only show the one link in the Caribbean. Do you think that we're going to have some other options for going the last mile in the other island?
I think you'll have other options on two fronts. One, there's other cables being built to almost. There's somebody looking at almost every island in the Caribbean. There's several companies, but on another area, we actually have very high-level discussions going on with cable and wireless on several fronts. That may be something that you would like to get with Rick Smith on and say, Rick, I think you need to get with your upper management team. We'd like to go as the university here and talk to cable and wireless about provisioning for Internet 2, maybe for distance learning, and see what we can do, because we think it would be good for the islands, and maybe they could give us a little bit of a break under a master purchase agreement or something like that. But I think that, if I were you, I would try to renegotiate those before a greater area and maybe a company like. I think might have some success out of it. They're more and more open as we speak. I mean, for instance, looking at Jamaica, Jamaica is getting ready to deregulate. They're already deregulating some parts of telecommunications, and it's virtually on the horizon for every place they operate. So they need to change, and they realize this, and they told us so. That they need to change the way they operate in some areas. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with going in and asking for a Caribbean-wide. You might do that in one of your organizations.
There is an organization, Unica has, what is that, I think 24 members. And the hope would be that single point to negotiate something with cable wireless producers. This is something that you'd be interested in facilitating.
I think it would be great to get members of the Unica, get them in front of with cable wireless and say, we've got to talk turkey here because we have students that are not getting the education they need because of the cost of doing this. What can we do? What can we do that's beneficial to both cable and wireless and beneficial to power institutions?
What mechanisms are going to be set up locally to get access to your network? I mean, how is someone interested in your capability going to be able to do that locally?
Well, right now we're accepting fiber into our facility, so chances are you would need to go through, say if you had a business and you want a 45 megabit channel to Miami, you would need to go to somebody who has an independent company and say, okay, sell me some fiber, some capacity on your fiber that you've got coming into the cable station, or you can get it through ICC, which will have fiber in the cable station, I'm sure. So
you will have.
We're not going to go with the.
Who's going to have fiber?
Connected to you, that's precise. Who will have fiber connected to you?
Hopefully this guy is going to have some. ICC will have some, or Virgin's telephone company. I think ATN is looking to have connectivity into the cable station. So it's virtually, we're open to all carriers and all comers that come in there and want that kind of connectivity.
I think, Rick, you need to explain the difference between the wholesale and the retail side.
Yeah, thank you. That's excellent. Our business is one of them. We're a wholesale carriers carrier, and we will facilitate anywhere we can to make it work that way. We prefer to do business with carriers or telecommunications carriers or people that are ISPs that are actually selling retail services, communication services. Obviously, if you're a Fortune 500, you need 155 megabits to link two floor plants together. I mean, we're probably talking, since I also know the Ford has all the various necessary charters and paperwork to do that kind of stuff. But really, we're creating an industry here. When we land this cable, we're creating an industry that heretofore has not needed to exist. Okay? And that industry is one of telehousing, providing that facility where you can go in and mount your equipment for last mile connectivity. Okay, to get capacity from that spot to your university. For instance, in order for you to use the DS3 that we're offering, you have to come to us with your fiber DS3. You have to get it through Telco, ICC, ATN, any one of a number of just LEI. I want to make sure I got it. You'd have to come through one of these companies to come in, and it's the same thing in Florida. In Florida, we're currently not doing what we call last mile connectivity. So there you've got Florida Power and Light, Del South, several railways, etc. So even some of the universities are actually putting their own fiber. So I know that FIU definitely has a lot of fiber that they have bought wholesale or constructed themselves. And there's nothing wrong with constructing your own fiber if you have enough capacity to carry it. You have to take a look at that.
Cool. My question is, given the fact that we're going to have all this interconnectivity, so in a sense, it doesn't really matter where you're located, be able to plug into the network. What would be the advantage of a company coming to St. Croix giving the landing site? Would there be any special advantage about the fact that we're going to have actually a landing site there as compared to being more remote?
Paul, that's a great question because I always like to get on my soapbox about that. The Virgin Islands has heretofore been excluded certain types of banking, investment banking houses, mutual funds, insurance companies. Those kinds of, you've kept those kinds of companies away because you just don't have the connectivity to allow their computers to talk with one another. You haven't had the sufficient bandwidth. It hasn't been up enough. I mean, I think connecting the two islands here, I think there's a microwave system that is up and down like a horse drawer, is part of my language. It's just not very good connectivity. Now with this type of SDH redundancy and this much broadband bandwidth, you'll be able to attract these kinds of organizations selling the Caribbean or the Virgin Islands lifestyle. And in my own office, I've actually had one mutual fund company and one insurance company call me during the year and says, hey, I understand you're going to the Virgin Islands. We're thinking about relocating our people out of downtown New York to go to that place and maybe run our mutual funds from there. Because there's no reason that they couldn't do it. They'll have, other than actually being able to walk out of their office and have lunch with a guy who works in a building 5 blocks away, they wouldn't be able to do that. But virtually all of their traders could be here, enjoying the Caribbean lifestyle, enjoying the sun, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that there's something that you can offer to these people. Another thing is that internet companies, people that are writing software for software companies, it's really difficult to keep those people on your payroll because when I go to our offices in Silicon Valley, it's like everybody's got signs that says we'll pay $50,000 starting bonuses and this kind of thing. And every time a guy goes to work, he's looking at all these deals that all the competitors are offering. One of the nice things that you could advertise that the Caribbean lifestyle to software people, for instance. They could come here, and chances are you're not going to lose those people as quickly because, for one, there's not as many places for them to go. They're going to start enjoying the lifestyle here, and I think that there's some real benefit to that. And I think that can be sold to people that do software, for instance. So
I think that's important. What is our competitive advantage?
Your competitive advantage is, your weather, the lifestyle that people have here. Also, it's fairly easy to get here from almost anywhere. There's really good air transportation, and I think as the business increases on St. Croix, I think you'll see some additional flights starting to come back to St. Croix that have disappeared over the years. Yes, sir.
Some of the benefits that you talk about weather and so forth also includes hurricanes. And I have spoken to some folks, and they're scared to death of hurricanes. But you obviously aren't scared to death of hurricanes because you've got you brought your cables down here and so forth. What's the approach to use to convince folks that hurricanes aren't really that much of a problem in this kind of business?
Well, you have to start comparing yourself to the whole southeastern quadrant of the United States. I live in South Florida. I'm as big a target as you guys are, and I don't see any difference there. What happens is that I think that's something that you're going to have to overcome in people's minds. Is we may have a hurricane threat once in a while. We may even have a hurricane hit once in a while, but our buildings are designed for it. We have all these protections in place.
And when we get through with hurricanes, we send them to Florida.
Thank you. But I think that's an objection that you need to overcome before they say it's an objection. For instance, when this guy's company builds a telehouse, the first thing he's going to do is say, I've got a Category 5 building. I've got 3 days of fuel for my redundant power plants. I have this and that. That's going to be something you have to sell. You have to overcome that objection before it becomes an objection. On the other hand, your employees never get snowed in. Okay? They don't get run over by snow plows. They don't slip on the ice and break anything. They might cut themselves on the coral, but there's a lot of good things about this. And I think it's going to take some selling on your part to get these kinds of questions. I really would like to see you as a team with the business part have like a monthly luncheon and a brainstorming session. I mean, really open, using the piece of paper. Who should we be talking to? Who's going to make the sales call? How are we going to put this together? Some things we got to consider. Where are these people going to live if they all come to St. Croix and go in this business park? If we're selling this great lifestyle, where am I going to put them up? Who's going to build those houses? You need to involve the developers. It says, look, here's what we want to do. Here's how many people we think are going to do. What can we do from a housing standpoint? Obviously, the houses are not going to go in the business park, most likely. I don't know. There might be an apartment complex in the business park because you might have to. So those are all issues that I see as issues you're going to have to overcome. I don't see them insurmountable, and I think, with the forces that are moving here, I think that all of these things can be overcome, and it would be good business. It's good business for the developer. It's good business for the university. It's good business for the people of the island, and those customers that actually come to relocate.
Yeah, I feel it's a great presentation. I really appreciate it. I can have to cut you off.
Yep.
Actually, the thought I had when Rick was making his presentation was, what would it be like if you were living in a town in the western United States and Union Pacific decided they were going to come through and have a major hub right in your area? I mean, I think that in the information highway age, it's as if St. Croix has somehow been singled out from all the possible locations to have the 21st century equivalent of the Union Pacific coming through St. Croix. Now it's up to us to be imaginative enough to take advantage of the opportunities that this will present. Think about opportunities. We have our next presenter is Bill O'Connor. I think we have the wrong affiliation for Bill. We can explain that when he gets up here. And he's a money man, and he's the kind of guy we have to be talking to as we start thinking about how we're going to finance this and how we're going to bring in investors that will be interested in working with the capabilities we have. Bill, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
They'll be right out of your way here.
We actually have to write some of this down. I understand that the Gods of the Carnival intercepted our materials on the way down here, or it's another FedEx story where you want to blame. I have one set of materials that I'll leave with Malcolm, but anybody that wants me can contact me later. Let me tell you who I am. I'm a lawyer. I practice in New York City. I, up until recently, was with a firm listed in your materials. I've since joined a firm known throughout the country for its high-tech practice and its Wall Street finance practice. It's a company called Buchanan Ingersoll. About somewhere around 500 lawyers and offices across the country, and also a major facility in London. My personal experience has been I have been practicing in global capital market areas since about 1987. With a focus since 1987 on the Eastern Caribbean, Central America, and believe it or not, Scandinavia. I don't know how they fit together, but it just happens to be what I've been doing. My clients range from the Wall Street names that you know to names you may have just recently heard about, like Benchmark Capital out in Silicon Valley, or Harborstone Capital in Silicon Alley. To companies you've never heard of, like Commonwealth Capital, which does seed capital transactions. And so there's a wide gamut of capital companies that represent. We don't make the decisions, but we're involved as lawyers in every step of it. And we also act as facilitators and introducers of companies, universities, and prospective financing entities to one another, so that incubator projects, research and development projects, and other items can get off the ground. I recently had the experience to be involved with a spin-off of Solomon Smith Barney, a company called Lux Capital. I think the oldest person in that company is 28 years old, wealth of experience in life. But that company was set up by Solomon and a group of other Wall Street companies to help universities establish incubators and R&D parks. And the reason Wall Street thinks that's important is because of something I was told recently by a friend of mine at Lehman Brothers, which is
you have three conflicting principles to get an R&D park off the ground. The first is you need to have an entrepreneur. You have to have entrepreneurism. Entrepreneurism cannot be taught. It's a passion. It's something that's part of that individual. It's part of that person's makeup. It's not something you school into something. It's the second part you have, you must have the empirical method, such as that used in the university, right, in order to vet the idea of the entrepreneur and take it through and make it viable, feasible, something you can take to the capital markets. That is not necessarily the same thought process as that which capital market uses, which is a method of underwriting and due diligence and the installation of physical disciplines on both academics and entrepreneurs, neither of whom are accustomed to having capital market pressures put on them. So it is a three-cornered balancing act, and it is a very delicate balancing act. And I will tell you that there have been as many failures in the R&D, both in the commercial sector and the public sector, as there have been successes. Florida Atlantic University is a known success. If you bring up FAU at Wall Street or out in Silicon Valley, people know about it. Scott's done a tremendous job, and I do think it's a great, I will tell you from a financial side, speaking as someone who represents Wall Street, it's a great model for a small R&D park. It's a great model. And I'm not trying to sell you, Scott, but I just think it works. It works for Wall Street. The first thing I'd like to talk to you about is how the Virgin Islands can reach capital. I lecture around the world on accessing capital markets. And the most important thing is to market yourself. Think of how the tourism industry portrays itself to prospective tourists, cruise industry, the hoteliers, everybody else. You must do the same thing here. You must sell yourself to Wall Street. If they've never heard of you, you're never going to get any money. I also work with Guam, and we had a terrific telecommunications project, Asian related, and half of the Wall Street merchant bankers and investment banks I talked to said, well, this would be a great deal if it was in South Florida, but it's in Guam. I don't even know where that is. I can't even find it on the map. Every time I flip the map, the crease in the map changes and I can't find Guam. They have to get over their geographical disadvantage as it relates to where the money's coming from. You don't have that problem. As Rick pointed out, planes come here easily. You're accessible not only to the East Coast institutions, but also to European institutions, many of whom are traditionally more involved in Caribbean financing than American companies who have late to come. I'd also recommend, in terms of targeting your audiences, that you look at what Bermuda did in the 80s and early 90s, Global's big presence there, and in terms of what their government did. Guam sent a delegation from their Economic Development Authority to meet with the Bermudian ministers to talk about how they went from basically a tourism-driven industry to a more telecommunications-based industry. People say, well, what do you mean telecommunications? They've got insurance and offshore banking. Well, you can't do any of that, as Rick said, unless you've got the cable, unless you've got the facilities there. So telecommunications drives everything. And you have that advantage. The cable comes to St. Croix. So that's the first advantage you've got. Second, don't get too hung up on the fact that you can't have 100,000 acres, because we have many companies that we represent that are developing software products or related internet products. Their company works around the clock, and they've got Russian software designers, they've got Turkish software designers, they've got people in Indonesia, the Philippines, not the guy that did the virus, but somebody else. And these companies literally work around the clock. One of the funniest things I saw once was in federal court in the United States District Court in the Southern District of New York. I saw a judge become totally confused when the following question was asked: where is your company headquarters? And the company question does constant streaming video development and uses worldwide. That there is no headquarters. And so she asked me, where do you go to work every day? Well, I work out of my house. Well, where do most of the people work? And he thought about it and he said, I think in Oregon. So that's where your headquarters are. No. Well, where do they go every day? Well, they work from their houses. And it kind of became this ridiculous series of questions because many of these companies don't exist within walls. They're looking for a certain number of professionals in certain positions, but they're linked to other expertises around the globe. And that's why when you develop an R&D project, you have to focus not only on what you have available as expertise in the university, but just as in all the departments, just as all the departments now have relationships with other universities, other hospitals, other learning centers, that has to be brought to bear on what you're going to do with respect to your own R&D project. You have to hook into that, your own network, your person-to-person network, because if a question comes up on a particular project where one of the companies in your incubator needs help and it's beyond the scope of the university, you can't stop there. You have to be able to connect by internet, telephone, fly the person out, whatever it is, and get that expertise in. That you can't leave the expertise just, in the geography of the Virgin Islands. Let's talk a little bit about capital. And saying on Wall Street, talk is cheap, capital is not. That's a mantra to keep going. There's all types of capital. And there's very flexible ways to structure transactions. Going back to the opening statement about the three competing philosophies and three competing ways to do it. The university should not, in my opinion, as someone who represents these people, should not be involved in credit or underwriting or due diligence decisions. As Scott said, there are people who do that a lot better than you do. And working with them, you have to partner up with them and let them bring that to the table. That's one of the things they're going to bring, fiscal discipline. There are different views of the world when it comes to seed capital, which is the first level. Second level is venture capital or merchant capital. Sometimes there's the same. It really has to do with how it's orchestrated. And you'll hear all kinds of talk about things like subordinated debt, mezzanine financing. A lot of these are equity substitutes, and it's more of an accounting exercise than anything else. All that money's at risk. What I find, we were talking about last night, what I find funny is that when somebody gives you a loan, when somebody makes you sign a note, they monitor that like crazy. A lot of the small angels, when they put money in your company, a lot of them disappear, and they can never understand that because equity is much more at risk than a secured loan. So, but all that money is at risk. Each company, particularly an incubator, goes through a series of phases, and as Marjorie said, you are going to need probably a higher component of incubator type companies here than Scott does in Florida, just because of things like geography, location, the state of the economy here, concerns about the political climate here, and other such factors. However, for the R&D facility to work, you have to target and attract at least one or two second stage companies, which Scott identified also, which is they have money in place, they can probably take care of a decent subsidized rent on 3,200 or 5,000 square feet. They have financial advisors and other advisors. They have contacts either on Wall Street or with one of the Silicon Alley or Valley funds, and they come in with a business plan that makes sense, that doesn't lose money, and in a perfect world, they already have a product that's out of prototype and is starting to go to market. That's when you're going to get the third level of capital, which is, we're not going to go to that, major private placements from people like DLJ, Lehman Brothers, and other institutions. And finally, the big golden ring at the end, which is the IPO, which is if your stock's not restricted, you can cash out on. If it is, God help you, because no one knows where the market's going to go. Talking about the market and the concerns that I heard last night about the bubble bursting. The sucker money bubble has been burst. Meaning that just because you have an I in front of your company or a .com after it no longer means you're going to have access the angel capital and venture fund capital, the old rules have come back, which means there has to be value, you have to have a product that makes sense, you have to have a business plan that makes sense. And that's the most crucial thing, is that business plan. That's what everybody starts a discussion with. And that's where business school people play an enormous role, working with technical people to get the business plan off the ground. If you don't have a good business plan, you can have the greatest product, have the greatest patent in the world, you're not going anywhere with it. So it has to be something, and don't get too academic on it. If Lehman Brothers wants their business plan written this way with a PowerPoint presentation, don't say, well, we've uniformly done it all in one way. Be flexible, adapt it to the fact. Remember, they have the money. You're trying to move the mountain to Muhammad. They have the money. So, be very flexible in approaching these people. The other thing about accessing capital is, remember, there is a huge contradiction in dealing with capital, lenders, and investors, and that is this. You can't move fast enough for them, and they don't care how fast they move with respect to you, within certain limitations. And by that I mean, the biggest joke you'll hear on Wall Street is they'll say, well, once we get you all the documentation, when will you get back to us? 2 weeks. Now, anybody here know what a Norwegian mile is? Right? A Norwegian mile is 10 English miles. Wall Street 2 weeks is like 10 normal 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, don't believe anything they say. They have their process. Usually the people that are pitching your particular company or your particular proposal for a loan will have to write that up and take it to at least one, possibly 2 committees based on the size of the transaction before anyone signs on the dotted line. So it is an involved project. What is helpful to do, which I understand just from talking to Scott, is to develop those partnerships up front. So there's a continuing familiarity with your project, with your park, so that you can pick up the phone and call Lehman Brothers, or pick up the phone and call Goldman Sachs, and this fellow knows that you're getting on the other side, knows everything there is to know about that particular project, and he knows what the philosophy of the university is, the type of companies you're trying to attract, and other similar matters, so you don't have the questions about, what do you mean you're trying to put an off-track betting facility that happened with us, and an R&D thing. That's not really R&D, it's a money-making venture, and it will, A, fill up the park, and B, probably make more money than most of the other projects starting out, but it is not something that's consistent with what your plan is. Streamlining communication between the various parties involved is the most important thing in dealing with capital companies. They're very impatient. If you don't return phone calls, they lose your phone number. When it comes to things like IDC benefits, I will tell you, having represented 2 major Wall Street institutions down here, it is a frustrating process for them, particularly those who originate out of California and New York. They are used to having economic development authorities, in New York it's called the Empire State Development Authority, take them by the hand and whisk them through. Because everyone realizes if we kick off one of these giants, right, with one of their pet projects, they'll go somewhere else. They'll go to, in New York's case, New Jersey or Connecticut, where it's perceived that there's a quicker process, or that there's a better pro-business climate. The other thing I would say is video conferencing has become a very important way to bridge geographic distance. Many of my transactions that I deal with these days are done over video conferencing for closings, video conferencing for discussing ideas, video conferencing for angel fund meetings. Our firm put together an angel fund group that meets every second or third, I think it's Tuesday, in San Francisco. That group is now reviewing deals in North Carolina, in New York, and in Tampa. And they do it with people attending by video conference and presentations being made. So you're accessing people in capital you never would be able to see. And some of those people are invited to the meetings. You'll never get their phone number. And suddenly they show up for these things. So you need to have these town meetings that go beyond the traditional pick up the phone or do you know anybody at, or if you can't do it, do you know anybody else at type of conversations. So it's very important. And if I'm going to point to one item to help this out, video conferencing is a big tool now for these types of transactions. I think it's very important, I'm going to go back a little bit, to define the interaction between the university and the companies, and that there not be any question marks about that. No one likes to give money to not-for-profits. People on Wall Street don't even like the sound of that word, not-for-profit. It says, not for me, not-for-profit. They are profit ventures. They want to know that there is a separation between the university and the commerce which is being conducted in the R&D facility. I particularly like the idea personally, and it's also because I do public finance work, of having a separate authority that relates only to the R&D development, that has statutorily the right to go to market and generate not only revenue bonds, which are of course tied to revenue streams, but what's known as a private activity bond, or to securitize federal funds. And if you're getting, for example, $12 million a year under a particular program, you can leverage that up to $50 or $60 million a year in the beginning when you really need the money for the seed capital and use it down the line. So I like that idea. I understand probably as well as a lot of the people in this room the difficulties of pushing any of these ideas through the legislature. Anybody watches TV occasionally sees me go toe-to-toe with some of the senators. So I know that's not an easy solution, but in terms of a model, it's a good model, I'll tell you that. It's very important that the university and your business school people and your management people have to show that it is sensitive to the concept of fiscal restraint, fiscal management. That people understand that just like they yell at people like me, like lawyers, what do you mean that job should have taken 3 hours? If you put the guy under the microscope, it takes 20 hours and you've got a time-based fee that's going back to the park. Investors don't like that. They want to be able to budget costs. It's the most important thing. Part of the business plan is going to be a budget with projections. If you deviate from these by any major percentages, you're going to lose that source of capital. Scott, I don't think you've experienced it, but I mean, you understand it. And finally, the last thing I'd just like to talk to you about is the concept of timely access to capital. Knowing when to go to the right person. You don't go to Goldman Sachs. You don't in the beginning to say, listen, we've got this great company, it's got some defense technology, we've hired a CEO, known on Wall Street as a jockey. If you ever hear a Wall Street guy saying to me, we have a jockey problem, it means that the guys around the company is burning too much money and they've got to get rid of him. So if you hear the word jockey, that's a reference to they want to get rid of somebody in management. But you don't take that to Goldman's mergers and acquisitions desk. You have to know, you have to access some of the smaller seed capital people. Also, when you're dealing with people, my clients like to see people that have their own money in the project. I mean, the entrepreneurs got at least $50,000 to $100,000 in the project, and I'll also often ask them to pledge the intellectual property, the patent, the copyright, the trademark, the design patent, to the capital source, which creates issues when you're dealing with a university that develops some of these patents and kicks them out into a company. It can be difficult and it has to be worked out. And most of the time, it's just a question of finding somebody that's not going to ask the university to put its patent at risk, at least not for a while. Most important factor in all this, and what I think the Virgin Islands has the biggest problem is, I was talking to someone from Deutsche Bank about this idea. And they said, well, Bill, you put a company in an incubator, a year and a half later, it pops out, where's it go there? I said, well, I assume we'd have a smart building, to use your term. We'd put them in. I said, that's not what I mean. When it's in the nest with the university, we see that that's a good environment. That's a nourishing, nurturing environment. But, you know, there haven't been a lot of success stories in Vergence, and there's a perception dating back to the 70s that it's not a great place for these companies to do business. I had a conversation like that with a major manufacturer of known in the world, making films and cameras, who felt more comfortable going to Dominican Republic than coming here. I know everyone here also knows that Microsoft is going to Dominican Republic. Wouldn't it be a great idea for them to be here? There has to be a tourism, going back to tourism, there has to be a tourism-style campaign to educate not only mainlanders, but every other source of capital in the world, Europe, right, the offshore funds, that this is a good place to do business, and that we have the fiber optics, and we have the intellectual capital, the university, to make these things go. And without that, I think you're going to have a major obstacle. So any business plan for this should include a public relations effort of some magnitude. And that's really all I have today. Thank you very much.
Let's go quickly to what we're trying to do right now. How practical do you think it is to start up? To build a bigger incubator, I can't afford to buy the rent down from the guy who built my building. Remember, I own the land, he owns the building. I want to rent space from him for my incubator. I'm going to pay full commercial rates. To build a bigger incubator, I've gone to two financial sources, Chase being one. Chase Capital is willing to come in and with their name on the building, Chase, FAU, Business Incubator, first get underwriting my rent for $150,000 a year to buy the rent down and to allow for vacancies. That's their only donation, and you can't get a name on a university building for $150,000 any place I know of.
Right.
Second, though, they get first look at all clients, which is what they really want.
That's the plan.
And that's what they're buying. But they're the person that's allowing me cheaper rent by putting their name on it. And they give me a source of capital. So a source of capital like that to help you with your incubator, which you have access to.
Partner, Chase Capital is very progressive on that. Fleet Capital is very. Fleet Capital started out in their high tech, in their high tech area several years ago with several $100 million of capital committed. Now they have almost $3 billion of capital committed and expect to go as high as $6 billion in the next 5 years. Everyone realizes that this is not a lot of fluff. But on the other hand, as we talked about, the underwriting standards are much, much tougher. The very notion of having an entrepreneur who flies by the seats of his pants with a university that's not subject to market pressures we put together means that they're going to be very strict in their review of all of these transactions. And again, Florida Atlantic has done it right. There are just as many that have done it wrong. I think because of that three-corner issue, a lot of universities like Georgetown, University of Virginia have put off starting their incubators until they can really see the models that work. And I think it was very wise of the university to invite Scott as one of the models that works on a smaller level.
Yeah, I'm going to have to interrupt again. We're getting close on our time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Our last presenter, and I extend my sympathies, I think, based upon my conference experience, are two really terrible positions to be in. To be the last person before lunch or the first person afterwards. So I have to deal with the second when people are very satisfied. But right now, I know we're all getting hungry. Lunch is ready. But I think that we have a very important presentation from Steve Rorlick, who's been very helpful with helping this project along. And he represents the kind of entrepreneur and the kind of locally involved person that's going to be important to make this research park work. So Steve, if you could take the podium, please.
I think following up on, thank you. I would like to follow up on Paul's comment about being the last guy to go and a very intense morning. I feel a lot like Zsa Zsa Gabor's seventh husband on the honeymoon night. I know what I'm supposed to do, I just hope I can keep you guys interested. So with that, I will tell you that I am reminded of the story of the blind man and the elephant. And for those of you who may recall, depending where the blind man was positioned at the beast, one would get a very different perspective of it. And this morning, I think, has been a great opportunity to review that and to look at different perspectives. over the last 8 years, my involvement with the Virgin Islands, I've had a number of different perspectives, so I thought I might just share those with you very briefly and then make 3 points and get off the podium. Back 8 years ago, I was one of those young entrepreneurs with an idea, and I was seeking angel investors, which we've heard about this morning. And one of my angel investors had recently sold his company in San Diego, where I was living at the time, and relocated to St. Thomas. And he said, hey, there's a thing called the IDC, and I would be more inclined to put money into your company, Steve, if you could come down and do it all in the Virgin Islands and get these great benefits. So with that, I got on an airplane and I flew, and at the time there was a gentleman named Eric Dawson, who I met with, and he was not only the IDC commissioner, I believe, but he was also responsible for tourism. While I sat in his office, I saw these beautiful posters of the Virgin Islands that had won all kinds of awards for how beautiful they were. And as I was waiting for the appointment, I was reading the text on all these posters, and I realized that every one of them said the same thing. See your travel agent. That was the call to action. See your travel agent. And I knew enough about the travel business, this was the company that I was trying to launch, was a travel company, that if a certain territory or destination offered certain travel agents some economic incentive, they might be inclined to steer people coming to them to that destination. And so it occurred to me that here were all these beautiful posters, and the call to action was to send people to travel agents who might then, in turn, send those people to another destination. So, as part and parcel of my IDC discussion, I talked to him about having a call to action for the Virgin Islands itself. And Commissioner Dawson said, that's a great idea, what would you do? So I came up with a phone number, 1-800-USVI-INFO. And I said, why don't you put this in every one of your posters, every one of your ads, and we'll set up a call center, we'll answer all the calls, we'll capture key demographic information, it will really help. Well, that's one thing that I did, and that's how I started doing business down here in the Virgin Islands. I also went through the IDC process, and went through the whole thing, through the legislature, and got it. And never started a company down here. I started it in California, and today it's on the NASDAQ with 300 employees and 100 million in revenues. I wanted to start it down here, but I couldn't start it down here because I couldn't find people with the skill sets that I needed to start the company, and yet the IDC requirements were that I had to hire so many people with these supposed skill sets that didn't exist here. So at the end of the day, that coupled with the fact that at the time the telecommunications infrastructure was not reliable enough, and I had to have people calling in, people answering the telephone. The power was interrupt us all the time. So the reality of the situation is I couldn't do it as much as I wanted to. After I took my company public, I then came down here to help out with an America's Cup campaign, and I met Mr. Cornelius Pryor from Atlantic Telenetwork. After working with the America's Cup for a short stint, he asked me to come on board, and I reported directly to him doing mergers and acquisitions. So I was on the flip side. For my previous career of always looking for money, I then had a bag of money, so to speak, and I was looking at like the deal du jour. So I became a lot like the people that I think Bill was referring to. I was looking at jockey issues, looking at company issues, and so forth and so on. So I've had kind of a different perspective as I've moved through my career. And when I got ready to leave to come here on Friday, I have one of these like calendars that has these little neat sayings, and I just happened to pull off Friday's, which was, some things have to be believed to be seen. And I thought it was appropriate for today, from the vision that's been shared from the president of the university all the way through a number of people that we've heard from today, is that's the starting point. When I met Malcolm, he asked me to focus on, just like Paul's been sort of the facilitator of the symposium today, he asked me to focus on what it's going to take to go from conceptual ideology to actual implementation. And so I have 3 things that I'd like to share with you. The first one is, let's tell the truth about the situation. That is the most important thing. And having been down here, and I've been living here since 1997, since January of 97, that's the one thing that has struck me the most about down here, is the first step gets missed. People don't tell the truth about the situation, so then you can't go on to resolve it if you won't acknowledge what the real issues are. And we've heard some of that from some of the other speakers. There are some perceived issues here, and those should be identified. Kind of the second point is that I think we should welcome obstacles. I think we should identify these obstacles after we've told the truth. We should say this is an obstacle and this is an obstacle, and we shouldn't resist it. We should encourage these obstacles, because the third point I'd like to make is we'll use these obstacles as the building blocks for the plan. And I know that seems somewhat backwards, but it's really not. Because there's a saying, all those things which seem to oppose our goals are actually the raw materials for the achievement of our goals. And so I'd like to encourage that. And finally, as a marketing person, which is where I'm oriented, I believe that you need to meet the needs of the customer. So if we think backwards and we think, not from the perspective of the research park and what it'll do here for the Virgin Islands or what it will do for the university, but if we instead put our feet in the shoes of the potential companies that would come in and drive this process, what's going to be important to them, and work backwards. So that when we come up with what we're going to start to offer, we've already thought about what the needs of the marketplace are. And I happen to sit on a board of directors in Bermuda for an investment that I spearheaded for Atlantic Telenetwork. And in Bermuda, the model that they've done there has been referenced earlier, is just awesome as far as business development. And I think we can take a look at some other places and work backwards and get it done. One of the other things Malcolm asked me to do was to pull together talent that could help us in getting things off the dime. And the company that I run now is called Net Adventures. It's a venture catalyst firm. And for those of you who may know the difference, a venture capitalist firm puts money in. A venture catalyst firm helps to get these brilliant ideas that people have and looks at them and says, okay, you need to tighten up the business plan. So we help them to tighten up the business plan. We introduce them to angels or venture capital people and so forth. We help them to recruit top talent into their companies. And through one of the first companies that we launched at Net Adventures, I had the good fortune of meeting a gentleman by the name of Ken Merritt, who is working on a similar program for incubators and research parks in the country of Korea and also in the city of Las Vegas. So I asked him, and he was kind enough to rearrange his busy schedule, and so without any further ado, I'd like to segue over to Ken. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for having me join you today. My name is Ken Merrick. I'm an investment banker from Los Angeles. I've, up until a year ago, been involved with a firm by the name of Capello Capital Corp, which is the nation's largest boutique underwriter of convertible preferred stock, which is the type of financial instrument that's used by most entrepreneurial companies to finance their growth. Our firm is typically ranked up there with the likes of JP Morgan, DLJ, and CS First Boston. We've ranked ahead of Goldman Sachs and some of the other major names typically. About a year ago, I started my own firm, Merrick Thompson Advisors. Decided it was just time to have my own firm and be out there doing things on my own. One thing led to another, and we found ourselves in the incubator business. Initially, I brought in a partner who has just put together an incubator in Seoul, Korea. The way he did that is he rallied a bunch of local investors, as typically is the best way to get an incubator going, is to get local investors with their money on the line. Those guys are bring a lot more to the table than just dollars. They're going to be partners with you in seeing that this local entity succeeds. The Nevada Development Authority then approached us and asked if we could do the same thing, put an incubator together in Las Vegas. They quickly scheduled a series of meetings between us and the mayor of Las Vegas, with a number of bankers in Las Vegas, the president of UNLV, to see about getting some funding, as well as strategic alliance relationships with the university there, and just the local investment community to move this project along. And that's what we're doing there. It's a four-part strategy in Las Vegas, and we're modeling it after some successful things that we've seen in Los Angeles. The four-part strategy includes first building a venture club, because anytime that entrepreneurship needs some further development in a place, you need to build the foundation by getting people talking to each other in some kind of a club-like informal atmosphere where they can come to an event once a month or once a quarter, or maybe some really large annual event to augment everything else that you're doing, where they can talk with other entrepreneurs, talk to venture capitalists, talk to attorneys, talk to other people that are working as strategy consultants in the entrepreneurial community to help them to learn what it is that they need to do in order to take their idea and turn it into an early stage business. So that's the first aspect of our strategy for Las Vegas. The second aspect is to build an incubator, or maybe as one new term for the type of incubator we're looking at is a business accelerator. The idea is not to create a building where people move in and create a new home for themselves, but to create an environment where we can bring some entrepreneurs in that have the initial ideas for a business. We could surround them with a team of people to help them with executive recruiting, strategy, legal, accounting, finance, and all the other elements that they may or may not have to bring their business along. Give them a little bit of seed financing and a work area to work out. Nothing really fancy, ideally something that will hold less than 10 employees. Within 6 months, we hope to push them out. That's the idea of the accelerator. And either this idea will fly on its own or it's going to crash and burn. But we know very quickly if an idea is going to work. And then the next stage of our strategy is a venture capital fund, which will be linked very closely with the incubator. We'll have first right of refusal to invest in any idea coming out of the incubator, and we may or may not choose to do so, depending on if the company has proven itself in that first 6 months in the incubator. You'll also have relationships with other venture capital funds to augment the investments we may make, which leads us to the fourth step, the fourth piece of our strategy, and that is to have such relationships with other both early stage and later stage venture capital funds. So that if we need to bring more money to the table than what our venture capital fund is able to commit, or if a company has grown to a later stage and now they need the bigger dollars, the $50 million or $100 million kind of investments, we have relationships with much larger venture capital firms to help to provide those kind of dollars. Here in the Virgin Islands, I'm here today. I'm actively listening to everything that's in the works and trying to formulate ideas myself, but I'm very early to the process. One thing that I have been hearing from the room is the thought that it's not only the Virgin Islands, but that this could be a point to bring the rest of Latin America and the Caribbean onto the internet. And the internet is a global mechanism, and there have been clusters, though. You see it in Silicon Valley, you see it in Los Angeles, you see it in New York. There's clusters where a lot of the activity is going on. It's a global marketplace, and to think globally here from the Virgin Islands, not just to think much bigger, because the internet allows that opportunity. One of our beliefs is, and I've heard this also from several people in the room, is that the incubator needs to be independently managed, not managed by a university, not managed by a government entity, because the ideas of entrepreneurship tend to be very much removed from the ideas of managing a more bureaucratic organization. And two examples of that are, I see in Southern California, which is where I'm from, USC, University of Southern California, started an incubator in 1995. About 96, 97, Idea Lab independently started an incubator that happens to have a fairly close alliance with Caltech. I think anyone who looks at those two entities can see the differing levels of success of those two entities. One that was, although somewhat separately managed, still part of the university and still in university buildings, and the persons running it were still on university payroll, versus the other was very independent, although closely aligned. One of their offices is just a block off of the university's property. Bill Gross, who runs it, is a member of the board of trustees at Caltech. So they have a very close relationship, and Caltech actually invested significantly in Idea Lab. Idea Lab has raised, in the most recent financing, they raised $1 billion. They've been involved with something like 27 companies, of which 7 have already gone public. They've actually already filed for an IPO to be one of the first incubators ever to do a public offering. So the level of success is very much more likely with the right external entrepreneurial management team and a strategic alliance with a university-like organization, rather than a university creating this as a separate department of the university. So the incubator needs to stand on its own. It needs to attract a talented management team. It needs to attract investment funds. It needs world-class entrepreneurial concepts and management. And it needs to have a qualified labor pool in order to continue to expand the businesses that are out there. So anyway, I look forward to continuing to work with everyone in the room. Thank you again for having me today.
Thank you. At this point, I'm reminded, since we are in the Caribbean, of a line from a Bob Marley song, that a hungry man is an angry man. I suppose it goes for women too. So it's time to eat. We're going to adjourn from upstairs, and we'll return. I just want to emphasize that when we return, Malcolm's going to make a PowerPoint presentation detailing where we are at this point, and that's really where we need your help. We need you to react to what we've done and tell us, where you think we're going in the right direction, where we're going in the wrong direction. So please return after lunch and assist us in this matter. Malcolm, you have anything to say? Okay, let's adjourn for lunch. Where's lunch? Top of the stairs, first room on the left. Identify yourself a little bit and then move on to the Rick.
I'm not the only Rick Smith that you may read about that's involved here right now, so I just wanted to clarify that. We have a global services, or is a global crossing gentleman, I guess, by the name of Rick Smith, who I haven't met yet. But, be careful not to confuse that if you can help. I'm a principal with IBM Global Services. I'm out of Tampa, Florida. I work very closely with Terry Brunn. Terry Brunn is the local IBM client executive. His client is primarily the government, though he has also done some major projects with the university over the past few years. Terry's been here, and IBM has been here for 30 years. So we, IBM, feel that we're more than just a vendor. We've been through the good times and the bad times. We continue to bring the products and services and solutions down here that continue to be consumed by the government. Thank you. The private sector, though, we haven't done a whole lot with, and the university, like I said, has been a good customer as well. What is IBM Global Services? Anybody ever hear of that? No. You've heard of IBM. IBM Global Services is the vision of IBM that used to be free. When you would buy a mainframe, or you would buy an AS400, or you would buy some type of networking technology, we brought this big army of consultants and engineers, and they told you how to put it in, turn it on, make it work. Well, we don't do that anymore. Now we sell the hardware, and if you'd like the services, we will provide those for a fee. A lot of our customers now are self-sufficient, don't need as much hand-holding. And oh, by the way, the systems are not as proprietary as they used to be, because now our systems support Microsoft products. We work closely with Cisco. We've opened up our architecture. And that brings less of a requirement for our blue suits, as you well know them, to provide the services. IBM's an $85 billion company. 5 years ago, IBM Global Services was 10% of that $85 billion. In 2 to 3 years, we're going to be 70% of the total company's revenue. So it's quite a transformation, and a lot of that's been driven by the e-economy, e-business. We are closely in relationships with companies like Cisco, Microsoft, Linux, you've heard of, something new on the horizon, Oracle, and SAP. Leaders in the industry. We now tune our systems to support and work in conjunction with the non-IBM best-of-breed products and software. For the past 2 years, my involvement here in the territory has been building leading-edge networks consisting of Cisco, as a matter of fact, Microsoft, Citrix, and IBM hardware across all 3 islands in the territory. We've been working for the hospitals, the health department, and soon the Department of Tourism, Finance, and Justice. What we've been doing is upgrading their systems, installing new cabling, new server platforms, and again, running Microsoft Windows and NT. And in support of applications like for the hospitals, they wanted to automate their patient care, get away from paper as much as possible, make the medical data electronic. For the health department, same kind of thing with clinics. In fact, eventually we hope to share the data from the hospitals with the health department so that when a patient walks in, it's a universal record that they can share to provide better health care at less cost. We've been partnering with local Virgin Islands consultants and service contractors, in particular some cabling partners that we've engaged here locally to work with us in the deployment of these networks. Something that I wanted to add today to my little speech here, we're excited that Global Crossing is making a commitment to the territory. We see that as one of the missing links that the territory is soulfully, painfully without, is good connectivity to the World Wide Web. And what I hope I can do is to stretch that connection in St. Croix all the way down to the desktop in various areas of the government, including the research park. It sounds simple. Believe me, it's not. It takes a lot of work, time, and effort to make that connection from one single point and make it reliably all the way back. So what can IBM do for the university's research park project? Well, like I said, we can build out the infrastructure. We'll get it from the desktop out to the connection in St. Croix, and St. Croix and Global Crossing will take it out to the World Wide Web. We can help build that infrastructure so that it will be scalable, it will grow with business, and it will not only apply to Research Park, but it will be building upon a model we've already started within the major departments of the government that we're working with. So what we've done, or what we hope to do, is not only build the internal departments network, but now we need to have some type of infrastructure around the territory that will plug into Global Crossing so that we'll reach out.
Great. Thank you for mentioning Global Crossing. I'd like to say that Global Crossing obviously is giving back something to the community in the DS3 that we're allowing the university to use to basically incubate their research areas for the first 3 years. We'd hereby like to challenge IBM to think about what you could be doing as a corporation along those lines to help them incubate, where you can keep your costs as low as possible during this incubationary period. We would like to challenge IBM to work with us on that. Where's the press?
Believe me, I hear you loud and clear, and I'm glad somebody asked me. So far, I haven't heard it. But you don't count though, Roy. I hear that from Roy all the time. What Roy needs is a little more help from the governor, because we're not getting it, not at all. There's just so much to do, and without the political will to make anything happen, as you all know, nothing's happening. So that's my frustration, just as I hear throughout conversations with all of you. There's so much potential here, it's just incredible. But without the political will, it's going to be tough. Now, this is a whole new approach, and this is what has me really excited, and I'm hoping that the grassroots will just overwhelm the Senate and all of the naysayers, however you want to describe them. So that's my hope, and I'll bring my help, whatever I can do. So in that light.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
And I will follow up.
But it's a two-way street. That's what I want to make a point of. It's a two-way street.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Because we're here for the long haul. We've been here for a long time, so we can do a lot to get things up and off the ground, and then we hope to continue on after that. Let's see. Well, you just took all my other points. So.
The wind out of his sails.
What else could IBM bring to the table? Well, IBM does have a venture capital group. It's called NetGen. We do invest in small .coms, but our rules are very restrictive. I don't think we have the flexibility that you would have in terms of how we invest and what our equity role would be and such like that. But I've done .com business in Florida, There's a lot of .coms in Florida. That's like a breeding ground, just like it is out west. And one of the things that I've come to realize is that even though IBM may not be financially invested in a .com, our name associated with them brings a lot of credibility to them when they go out to talk to venture capitalists, when they go out to do something to try and expand their business, or to bring in customers, or to bring in companies that you want to incubate. So having IBM as a partner in your project, I can't see it hurting you. I think the credibility it brings will help. It may be, in some cases, not at all. In some cases, it might be a lot. You never know. I don't know how you plan on campaigning to attract your potential movers and shakers down to the VI, but I think that bringing us along won't hurt at all. So we'll be happy to work with you guys in that way. Thanks.
I just wanted to say that one of the experiences I learned very vividly here at the Virgin Islands was that there's the formal structure and then there are personal networks. And especially in societies like this, the personal networks tend to be much more important than the formal structures. And I think what we're doing here, in addition to all the brainstorming, is hopefully building personal sense of networks that will be invaluable as we move forward with this project. So the human factor is still important even in the age of technology. Thank you all, and we'll resume at 2 o'clock. As I emphasize, it's really important to the university that you participate actively in this session, because this is where Malcolm is going to be making our presentation, and you can look at it very critically, I hope, and let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what we have to change, what obstacles can become building blocks for success. Thanks very much. See you later.
You know, Scott, the 5-acre
as he does this PowerPoint presentation and let you know what our thinking is as of today, and please give us your feedback about what we should be doing tomorrow when we look at the more intensive plan. Malcolm?
Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone had a good lunch?
Yes.
Well, this morning the president indicated what our charge was. And basically his vision is that we need to reposition the university to better serve the higher education and economic development needs of the Virgin Islands in the 21st century. You know, as we have to rethink a little bit about how the university functions and how it needs to reposition itself to address new and emerging needs for the 21st century. And that basically is the charge that the president has given us. So the question is, how are we going to accomplish this? What exactly are we going to be doing to make this happen? How do we then translate a vision into reality? And many of us have had we had some discussion about that today, and that's basically where we're heading. So we prepared a presentation. We've been thinking about this particular initiative, Research Park, Incubator Park, and what we like to do in this presentation, give you a little background about the university. Some of you may be already familiar with the university, some of you may not. And then share with you some of the thinking that has been developing as we consider this particular concept of Research Park as an engine for economic development in the territory, and as a way of enhancing the role of the university in the overall economic development of the territory. Well, context. By way of context, we have, of course, the Virgin Islands was acquired from Denmark in 1917. We have 4 islands, population of 20,000. Per capita income, I think, is the highest in the Caribbean. Someone said that isn't true. I was told that BVI has a higher per capita income than we have, but I'm not sure whether that is true or not. And the chief industry, of course, is tourism, some assembly, oil refinery. University profile. We have publicly supported university created in 1962 to meet the higher education needs of the U.S. Virgin Islands and the wider Caribbean. We have 2 campuses, one in St. Thomas, 175 acres, one in St. Croix, 125 acres. We have approximately 3,000 students on both campuses, 500 faculty and staff. We are an accredited institution. by Middle States Association. We offer undergraduate degrees in computer science, CIS, what does CIS mean?
Information system.
Computer information systems, marine biology, nursing, etc. We have graduate degrees, MBA, and the MA in education. We are land grant institutions. I don't know if many of you are familiar with what land grant institutions. That makes us eligible for federal funds for agricultural and corporate extension service and so on. And we've been a land grant institution since 1971. We have 8 BCU institutions, historically black colony universities. Even though we were not among the original HBCU institutions, both President Reagan and President Reagan signed an executive order making us eligible for HBCU benefits. We are a member of the UNICUR, which is the Caribbean Universities and Research Institutes. And there was some talk earlier about the possibility that that association, which comprises universities from throughout the Caribbean, including the French Antilles and Puerto Rico, University of the West Indies, University of Guyana, we are all part of this UNICUR association. We have a history of funded research from a number of federal agencies, including NIH, DOD, NSF, etc. We have a history of collaborating with contracts with government and private institutions. We have 2 Rhodes Scholars, both from the island of St. Kitts, by the way. We have 1 Cruz Prize winner. We have 1 premier who's the premier of Nevis. Many of you are familiar with the island of Nevis, which is associated with St. Kitts, and the premier of that island is a graduate of the university. We have legislators, ministers of government, among our alumni throughout the Caribbean area. In terms of our technology infrastructure, all our buildings are connected by fiber. Exactly can explain more than I can what that means. 300 network computers including student laboratories. We have our IBM RISC, video conferencing, T1 internet connection, and inter-island microwave systems. The new vision. Dr. Ken is basically saying we need to position the university as an active player in the creation of technologies and the transfer of commercial applications to the private sector. That's an important undertaking for the university. The university needs to assume a leadership role in partnership with the government to foster new business development for the Caribbean. That is the location or relocation of business segments in the USVI. There was some discussion earlier this morning about the fact that businesses can locate many of their business segments. I think American Airlines does their billing services out of Barbados, is it? Barbados. So, I mean, the whole, pardon me? British Barbados. Yeah. So, particular business, it's not simply a question of relocating a business in its entirety. Businesses can find that particular segments of their business may be more economically conducted or operated in the Virgin Islands. And of course, business incubation. We want to make distance learning an integral part of the university language strategy for the delivery of higher education in the region. Distance learning, an important part of the future for the delivery of higher education to the islands of the Caribbean and beyond. And we want to develop the resource base required to support 21st century information age business. We want to be more proactive in terms of the way in which we develop programs at the university. We don't want to develop programs in isolation from the businesses that would employ people. We want to work out arrangements and collaborations with businesses in the future so that we will know ahead of time exactly what skill sets are going to be needed by our graduates so that we can put in place the programs to have those graduates available for business and industry. Emerging opportunities. Rick Scarborough spoke about some other presenters about access to high-speed communications growing in importance over geographical location in determining business location. For some businesses, it really doesn't matter where you are, as long as you have connectivity. Major corporations are taking an important part of the economic reach in emerging islands, Global Crossing and a number of other businesses. And for us, the establishment of the Global Crossing hub in St. Croix will make possible the availability of broadband data connections to the rest of the world. And of course, important for the development of the university's research capability, UBI has been offered free access to the Global Crossing network for research purposes for 3 years. And we know that's a major challenge in terms of how do we get from where we are to the hub and so on. But just the availability of that opportunity to the university should tremendously enhance the research capabilities and potential for the University of the Virgin Islands. You saw this picture before, so basically Rick's starting to speak to this a lot better. But you can see that St. Croix is strategically located in terms of the rest of the world. So fortunately for us, we have been thrust strategically into the information age by the selection of St. Croix as this major hub by Global Crossing. Here's what part of the challenge looks like for the University of Virgin Islands. The Global Crossing problem is out here, way out here. We're going to have to find some way of making that connection. And that's part of what IBM is going to help us with. Based on the challenge that was put up by Scott. Okay. All right.
Explain, wait, back. Explain the Frederickstead Tower, why you have that dot there.
Well,
It's possible, you can get it either by fiber or microwave. It's just, we have a tower on the St. Croix campus. The tower is in Frederickstead, so the problem is to get around the mountain range on the north side there. So there are two ways you can do it, either by fiber or microwave.
yeah.
But
Ideally, we would have bought fiber.
I was trying to get Michael to explain why the Frederickstead Tower was kind of located there
Why was it located that way, or why did we have it on this?
on this. I don't know about Southern House property.
Yeah, okay.
Basically what a Southern House property is.
Oh, okay, all right. That's very good. You can make the application up.
Is the what?
So, the university has about 25 acres of land.
No, that's an existing tower, and it's
Yeah.
just where you start to go out to Sandy Point.
Yeah. But Dr. K is making the point that that 25 acres we have located in this area is strategically located, and that if for example, we wanted to develop a piece of the park here, we wouldn't have to travel from here to here. All we have to do is start from here to here. That's the point that Dr. K is making.
I see.
Because we have 25 acres of land located in that area.
Yeah, there's a tower there if you need
Yeah,
it for a
precisely.
microwave.
Yeah. Okay. Many of these points have already been made this morning. Why would anyone want to consider the Virgin Islands? These are some ideas we've put together. We want you to help us to either delete or add additional strengths. We have a U.S. flag and the laws protect investment, attractive natural environment, generous tax incentives for businesses, government and university support, UVA strong computing and natural sciences. VI is a major hub for undersea fiber cables connecting the mainland, Europe, Caribbean, and South America. We have strong Caribbean connections. We see ourselves as being the regional leader in higher education, and particularly in the area of information technology. And certainly, if we are able to build this park, not if, when we are able to develop the park, we certainly will be in an even stronger position in terms of delivering research and higher education in the region. We have frequent container ship connections in the mainland and the Caribbean, daily flights connecting the mainland cities in the Caribbean. We have well-trained English-speaking and enthusiasts both anxious to upgrade or return home from the mainland for high-tech jobs. We have the presence of internationally recognized Federal Reserve member banks in the territory, and we have education and cultural opportunities provided by a connection to the University of the Virgin Islands. Okay, what's the basic concept? Here again, we just share with you where we are in our thinking, and hopefully you can help us refine what we're doing. We want to take advantage of these emerging opportunities by creating a research park business incubator community where corporate partners and their staff can live and work. Live and work. One of the important considerations as we think about this initiative is that we want to think in terms of a single source solution to many of the problems that investors and so on will face in relocating to Virgin Islands. So we just don't want to simply have a park facility and say, well, you can come into a park, but you need to go around and see if you can find where you need to live. We want to either enter into arrangements with developers and so on, so that housing accommodations will be provided.
Within the park?
Well, either within the park or outside the park. Again, that's part of what the business plan is going to help us decide. But the concept is, we need to think of a single source solution. What are all the problems and issues that will be confronted by an investor moving in, and address as many of those in our solution as possible? The idea of accommodation was really not my original idea. When I visited Scotland, he was the one who put that in my head. He said, you need to think about that as an important element in your solution. You're not in Florida, where you're on an island, so you need to think about some of that important aspect as part of your solution. And so this will then enable us to develop a synergy between UVI and the private research resources, facilitate business formation, technology creation, and technology transfer, and match the economic development needs of both St. Thomas's and Croix with the needs of black clients. Some people we want to locate on St. Thomas, some people we want to locate on Croix. So basically, what we want to do basically is to think about the development needs of both St. Thomas and St. Croix, and also the needs of clients, and try to bring about that important match between the needs of clients and the development needs of both St. Thomas and St. Croix. We want to provide 21st century job opportunities for the population at all levels, attract new investment, and diversify the economic base of the territory, which is very important. We've heard that we've done it in Bermuda. Why not the Virgin Islands? Generate revenues and increase institutional capacity for the University of Virgin Islands. Yes?
How are we going to address the challenge of paying business licenses, which the whole process is? I mean, that sounds to be a very key point we have to address. Right now, to obtain a business license in the territory, you have to break the foot, so to speak. The gentleman was good years ago, but it's even worse now.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, that issue has to be addressed as part of the overall plan.
Yeah. As importantly, certainly, because just little nuisances like that could discourage people a lot. So we want to identify all of those kinds of issues and make them an important part of the solution. How do we integrate those kinds of services as part of what it is we're going to be offering?
It's a one-stop solution.
Precisely, one-stop shopping. Exactly. One-stop shopping.
Maybe we can get them to just let the university do that for them, privatize it to us.
Yeah, precisely. One-stop shopping. That's the concept. Yeah. Okay. We've drafted a mission statement. Basically, that to promote economic development of the territory and broaden capabilities of UVI through the creation and transfer of technology from campus-based research centers to the marketplace. The support of a research environment that combines the resources of the university, public sector, private industry, and a progressive community. A starting point for us to think about what it is we're trying to accomplish, and subject to review, further discussion, and refinement. We thought it was important to begin to identify some of the issues we think would be a concern to investors coming in. And they have to be somehow a part of whatever plan we're going to put together. First, the cost of doing business in the Virgin Islands. We know that we say that things are much more expensive here than they are in many states in terms of the cost of freight and all the other kinds of things. Business incentives, that's a concern that companies are going to be concerned about. The unfriendly business climate, that came up this morning. While we may not be able to eliminate it entirely, how do we minimize? And how do we set up a process that is maybe less political in terms of the contact of investors with the Virgin Islands and of course the park? Offshore location, if that's a concern, how do we overcome that? Limited high-tech living pool, how do we address that? We're going to have our businesses here that's going to have demand for, how do we overcome that? Quality of life issues, people moving to the Virgin Islands will be concerned about the quality of their life. How do we make sure that the quality of life is at least meets their minimum expectations, if not better. Competition from other localities, not just the mainland United States, but also some of the Caribbean islands around. I'm told, for example, that, you know, I think the number of Eastern Caribbean countries that are now offering major incentives to companies to relocate in those islands. So we have to see our competition as being not just the other states, but also the islands. And of course, there's Santo Domingo, which is a major competitor, and of course Puerto Rico. Huh? And the BVI.
You're going to have to come up with a competitive matrix where you put all those various items about how they're attracting the businesses with, you know, what incentives they're offering individually, corporately, et cetera, and compare that in a matrix to yours, something that you can actually present to respective college. You know.
Okay, good. There's one approach, competitive matrix.
College of Business.
Pardon me?
College of Business assignment.
College of Business assignment. Communications and connectivity. Fortunately for us, we think we have a solution in the availability of the Global Crossing Hub. And I've heard it said by many presenters this morning that that has been a major stumbling block for the Virgin Islands. Access to high-speed connectivity. And of course the natural hazards. Dr. Ken made that point this morning. I think we had some responses that ought to make sense. You have natural hazards everywhere. How do you compete with the snow situation and so on and so on and so on. We took a stab at what we considered to be the basic research path that is really what we call a single source business solution, provides an appropriate environment for corporate partners to deliver work, which is this sort of one-stop. How do we create a kind of a one-stop kind of solution to the business and issues that investors would bring? And something we're calling a business tourism program. It's a kind of an alternative worksite program. The point was made earlier that many companies have their software developers who would be sort of glad to work in the Virgin Islands. But it may well be that companies may have many of these software developers in companies throughout the United States, and they would not be interested in locating all of their business segments here. But we could offer, as an attractive product, the notion of rotating your people out, either in 1 year or 6 month stints to the Virgin Islands, and promote that as a way of saying, listen, you can still get your work done, but give your employees the opportunity to work in the Virgin Islands. We have all of the capabilities and all this stuff, and so we promote that this may be something that might have some attractiveness to companies. Yes.
As part of the research part, I mean, someone earlier they mentioned that most of the workers in that type of industry work out of their house. If we are to do something like this, then it needs to tie to the rest of the community, because you're going to need high-speed connectivity at some houses and maybe a hotel, or it falls back into where say, are you going to provide housing? Because if you're going to say, okay, well, send your software developer down here, he's not going to want to go to an office. He's used to working in his skivvies, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That's something that has to be,
just factored in. Yeah, in other words, make sure that the infrastructure is in place to do that sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yes.
The key word that I look for at the top is the value of the university. What does the university bring under the key product areas? I'm going to pass out to a smaller group the University of Arizona's objectives and what they do.
Yeah.
Their biggest deal is we're not a real estate deal. The biggest reason to come here is the university. And I think under key products, it needs to be more an important point. If the real reason is the university, it's got to be the selling point. It also helps you avoid a lot of political problems.
Okay.
where the developers don't rise up and say, this is just a cheap real estate deal. These guys are getting a tax break and they're running a business park. If it's university, 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 that cuts the wind out of the sails of a lot of objections.
I think you've hit on one important part there that we kind of focused on this park, but really what we, there's two things we need to focus on. We need to focus on the prospects. Those prospects are things like be customer focused, if you will, and we also need to focus on the university. Okay, we're losing the focus of the university, and I think you made a great point. The university needs to be sold as much as anything else in this. And so part of that selling thing that we talked about needs to
Focus on the university and the clients.
we need to be focused on the university, and we need to be focused on the client. In other words, not so much focused on the park. The park is because of those two items.
Okay, good point. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. Okay, this is just a further elaboration on how do we improve the business climate, the general work environment, and the quality of life. But you have copies of this presentation in your file, do you know that? A copy of this exact presentation is in your packet, so that, yeah, okay. So this is just a further elaboration on some of those some particular elements and what we can do to address some of those.
Consistent with our last point, I look at several other things I brought from the Association of University Research Partners. The number one thing in the feasibility study and all their work is what is the value of the university. It goes right back to this point again. It really needs to be the number one item above the business climate.
Gotcha.
What is the university's value here?
Cool. Okay. Okay.
I got a question now.
Yes.
Going back to your university, what's university value at your university?
Strong computer science department, strong mechanical engineering department, strong business school. I mean, mechanical engineering did first because my predecessor came from the College of Mechanical Engineering. So our first tenants in the park, were mechanical engineering companies. But our computer science department is really stronger, and that's who's taking over now the College of Business. In this e-business entrepreneur world, we've passed the College of Mechanical Engineering behind.
Malcolm, that raised the question now.
But we do have a little slide on what you might be interested in. We have a slide.
No, the question comes up there now is that what strength the university has.
Yeah, but we have a little slide where we start to put together.
My only point was put it higher.
Precisely, yeah.
Put it higher in the presentation.
Okay. All right. But this presentation is just really for us anyway. I mean, it's not presentation we're going to make to anyone else. But as we develop the elements for the plan, we need to focus and highlight on these particular points. Okay. Here we just start we identify facilities for long range clients, integrated facilities, residential facilities, and auxiliary facilities.
There it is.
Okay. All right. We started to put together some elements of what UVA entails. Committed to economic development, high-tech technology business, effective work relationship with local and federal government agencies. Staff and faculty of UVA executives related technology fields, including telephony, data networks, data transmission, and computing. Staff of UVA's SPDC, and provide assistance to startup companies. Research and public service decision capability to provide market research, environmental studies, demographic analysis. Students, graduates, and alumni with specialized skills. Targeted customer-oriented training programs to develop a skilled workforce. Our Eastern Caribbean Center with regional connections. Our land grant research programs. Being an autonomous public institution and conveniently located at attractive sites for development. Those are a number of elements that we've identified as well. I'm sure we can strengthen these some more, but and we'd like to have your help in identifying exactly. And as we move through the feasibility study stage and stuff, we want to have these things more concretized and developed, so we can use them in marketing the program.
before you move on, Rick, you're saying that this kind of information should be sort of front focused. This last slide that we just saw, you're saying that that information should be put more in the front of the
Yes.
presentation?
Yes, setting the environment better, that this is a university deal, this is not an unless your objective is economic development, and that will be saluted on the flagpole more. But I think politically, as a university-related research park, you're going to get more cooperation as a university-related research park as opposed to just an economic development opportunity.
What we found here, you're quite correct, it depends on the customer.
Yes.
If we go to the legislature with this idea, the economic development focus will give us better returns from them.
Well,
but when we go to the people who want to be customers, tenants and so forth, then what you're suggesting. So I guess we'll have to have different, diverse presentations, as has been said before.
Sure.
Depends on
Cut and paste.
the audiences.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
The other thing is, if there's a strength that you have, you want to flaunt it. But if it's not a strength, maybe you don't want it up front. So I think first we have to take a look at what the requisite skills are, or attributes or benefits that this university has, before we make the determination on whether you put it up front or move it down.
Yeah, good point.
Now,
To take a closer look.
We do have a strong science and that area, computer stuff and whatnot. We do have strengths there. We got students who've gone on and they're doing very well in the new economy and stuff because of the training that they've had here at university.
Okay, this what we're trying to do today is to identify some of the key players or stakeholders and see if we could say, well, how would each particular stakeholder benefit, and these are the selling points to the different stakeholders, if you will. We have the community, which we talk about increased employment opportunities at all levels, access to modern technology, improved education programs, positive impact on the school system. The UVI, an enhanced learning environment, expanded image and reputation, job placement opportunities for students and graduates, equity participation style companies, revenues of legacy beneficiaries, class rates, training, etc. In terms of some of the benefits we discussed. Government of the VI, opportunity to become a global player in new economy through diversification of the economy, increase employment, and expansion of the tax base. Developers and venture capitalists, return on investment, equity participation, tax incentives. We are looking at what we might be able to include in legislation to make it possible for developers to have some form of tax incentives. We don't quite know what is possible yet, but we want to look at that as part of the overall package. Park clients, single source business solution, one-stop shopping kind of thing, favorable business climate, tax incentives, access to EBI programs and resources, especially in design facilities, for hurricane, etc., etc. That's what
we need to talk to David Jones. They have a bill out right now coming before the legislature to expand the IDC legislation.
Yes, in fact, we had some discussion about that this morning. Ms. Fandry's presentation, yes. And also, Fandry will also issue a presentation. We are thinking, though, that we have to talk to individuals, there's a question about that. But strategically, we may be better off modifying the UVI's title 33 or whatever that is, university, but there's a special section of the code devoted to the university. And so we may not try to deal too much with the IDC situation and more deal with the code related to the university and giving us powers under that to deal with what we're doing. Okay, so that's another approach to what is talking about. Okay, we thought we'd identify some key holder issues to be addressed. Stakeholder support and backing. That is getting the backing of the key stakeholders, the governor, the legislature, all the key stakeholders in this process. How do we address investor concerns? How do we bring about a particular product market fit? In other words, who will we be targeting and what particular products will bring about the particular fit that is needed there? Site locations, internal structural arrangements and interface of the park itself with academic programs, management, financing, marketing, among others. Yes, sir.
As for site location, I think the site location and site plans.
Site location and site plan.
The only reason I say that, I do a little bit of marketing of the future sites.
Yes.
By a wonderful rendering. And let me tell you, that site location sells more sizzle by showing a wonderful site plan. Whether you're asking for an investor to come in and endow a share of the MIS site, you know, so they get the information they want. But a good, sexy site plan will do an awful lot. I hate to say it's fluff, but boy, do people that never file an official looking architectural rendering.
Yeah. I agree with you now. In fact, we were thinking of getting a rendering for this presentation, but we weren't successfully doing that. But I'm glad you brought the point up because it reinforces the thinking we had. But these are some of the key planning issues that we think would be important. Do we need to add? Yes.
I think in management too, we may be looking at several levels. I mean, one is going to be if we set up a research park, who is sort of the policy governance for that. But we've also heard a lot today about, you know, who says yay or nay on perspective, who works with the incubator businesses, you know, who reviews the business plans and so forth, which is probably a more hands-on.
So we have the governance issue. What's the second issue?
Really, who does the nay or yay? Who works on who reviews the business plans?
Client selection. Client selection.
Client selection.
Client selection, and working with clients. If with incubators you have somebody who is, you know, has an ongoing operational role or review role.
Okay. Intellectual property.
Technology transfer.
In this management, going back to thinking about this management thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think it would be a good idea if there was something, if there were from each of the colleges, some way or something coming from the university staff as to what their hopes and dreams and availability and you know, some kind of bottom down or top down forecasting of their requirements.
Would that be covered by the internal structural arrangements and interface with academic programs?
Oh, I didn't realize that was with the academic program. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Thank you.
Okay. Importantly,
That's an important point.
one of the points that you're emphasizing, and Scott also emphasized, this is a university research. So the question is going to be, what's the linkage with the academic programs at the university? And how does that linkage work?
It's the main thing that has to be sold, I think, as opposed to a real estate deal.
Okay. Good. Very good. Well, okay, the actions going forward, identifying potential investment partners, legislation, and Marjorie has been doing an excellent job for us in terms of doing the research on that legislation. I mean, we're looking forward to her continued involvement and leadership of this particular issue. And of course, business plan. We felt that this symposium would give us some of the raw material that was needed in terms of the steps going forward. Once we leave this room tomorrow, the question is, what are the steps, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that we really need to be taking to move this particular initiative forward? Yes?
It was mentioned also that this should not really be run by the university or by government. It was mentioned that it should be run by private sector. There's no, somewhere in, I think, this page or business plan, there should be some mention of how we can get private sector involved or some other entity involved in directing this whole thing?
We are not sure if we said not university. I think what we said is we need an autonomous enterprise.
Business Park Authority.
Like an authority.
Yeah, like an authority.
Like
Not that.
I mean, you want the university involved because this is a university event.
No, but what you want is an authority like Scott has. Okay?
Would that be part of the draft legislation?
Yes.
Now, if I were going to put this temporarily or prioritize it, I put the business, and I want to engage some management. Of those three, your business plan comes first. And the legislation may have to be changed to meet concerns of potential investment partners. So, you know, getting the business plan is you've said this, but it's the most important thing you have to do. And if you do a good job on that, the rest of it will follow.
Okay. Good one. All right. Any other observations?
Only that instead of legislation or additional legislation, I would always think implementation, because as we talked this morning, there may be some things that can be handled through bilateral memoranda instead of contracting through legislation.
Okay. Yes.
Kind of just like I mentioned earlier, I'm here as much today to listen as I am to make suggestions. But there's a lot of different ways that you can move forward with this kind of project. One where it's more of a university-based model, another approach where it has alliances with the university boards, like especially the incubator aspect. Maybe the incubator becomes a tenant of the research park, but has a complete independent management team that includes venture capital to the people and people that have been trained through the process of maybe taking companies public.
Could you speak a little louder just before we get you on?
Sure. And people who have been trained or at least been experienced in going through the process of taking companies public or working companies through where they grew a company and merged it with somebody else.
Right, that's really an issue of stewardship, and you're going to have to be flexible and identify the various types of entities you need to steward, whether it's incubators or decent companies, through the process, turn them into, healthy, successful companies. So the whole issue of stewardship is very, very important.
Yeah, and venture capital is mentioned a lot here, but if it's a project that's fully within the university, it's not typical that venture capital gets entrapped into that kind of entity. If it's an independent entity that has a strong affiliation with the university, then there may be some potential there to sort of get the attention of the venture capital community.
But what you're talking about has then an important bearing on structuring.
Yeah.
So exactly how we're going to structure and how autonomous the agency will be. I think there's general agreement among the key university officials that this is an entrepreneurial enterprise. That people in academics are really not qualified to, they're not entrepreneurs in the classic sense. They're more academicians and idea people and so on, not people who sort of run businesses and make them successful. So what we want then to be is the best of both worlds. We want to have an enterprise that can be run like a business in close association with the university, as is the case with Scott Ellington's. He was brought in from IBM. So he's a manager. He knows how to make things successful. He wasn't brought from a business division as a professor teaching marketing or something like that. So, and I think that's the kind of model that we're interested in pursuing, because we recognize that for this to be successful, we need strong management, entrepreneurial capability to make it work and for it to succeed. So I think there's full commitment in that regard as far as the university top management is concerned. Yes.
Do you ever, doing this again, like to legislators or something, but obviously a little different. Yeah. I think I would really start by having an overview of the university. Unless I missed something, I never saw an overview of the university and what it has to offer. I guess everybody here already assumes we all know that, but I don't. Okay. I'm not sure the legislators all know that. So, you talk about
overview of the university.
Yeah,
we had an element scans, but we put together, so it was a more focused,
Well, that way you could kind of pull the elements together. Oh, I see this, the university is what it has to offer. Oh, yeah, now I can see, now they're going to do this thing here, and you get this visualization step here.
And especially the stars. As you go through and pick out the stars, at Duke it's biomedical, at UNC it's virtual reality, at NC State University it's the vet school. Who are the stars that we're going to build this around? And as opposed to a broad brush of everything the university does, who are the real stars? Is it computer sci and science? And that's really the basis of the business parks cluster.
What is the reason for, what is the star of the University of Virgin Islands?
science programs.
I'm going to tell you, I don't know. It's kind of difficult to determine what you mean by the stars, but in terms of the performance of the graduates,
Science and math, the business graduates have done very well. In fact, one of our road stars was a business graduate. In terms of the instructional program, you think in terms of the graduates. In terms of your research, you think in terms of reputation globally, and researchers coming here or invitations to go elsewhere. In terms of our research, our strongest program probably is in the area of the research that's been done in land grant. Research in terms of some genetic research with regards to plants and stuff, together with the kind of research that has led to aquaculture and hydroponics linked together, so that you have on one end you're raising fish, and the other end you're using the waste to grow lettuce and stuff. And you know that stuff that has been very, very successful. So I guess
both are good reasons. Both are good stars. Success of graduates from those business schools and those science schools is really important to a business person. The research is also important to different sets of business people, different set of companies. But they're both university related.
Now we have some good marine research taking place also. But the research that's most outstanding in terms of invitations to go elsewhere is the research that we're doing in the land grant programs, particularly the research having to do with fish farming and all the kinds of, there are all kinds of different variations of that.
And by the way, that is high tech.
Oh yes,
fish farming is very high. It doesn't have an e-business, but it is a great piece of work.
As a matter of fact, the only reason it hasn't really taken off here is because of cultural reasons. People still like to eat, fish from the ocean, like to go out and whatnot. But if we had probably a larger Asian community in the Virgin Islands, it would have taken off.
One of the things I'm having a little trouble digesting at this point is if you take the last few comments relative to the stars of the UVI at this point, and laying that against the backdrop of what Global Crossing is bringing to the party as far as bandwidth, and some of the discussions relative to incubating .coms or e-businesses, maybe I'd like to hear some other people's thoughts, because I'm having a little trouble dovetailing all those. And I think linearly backwards. Like, who are we going to go after because this is what we're going to offer, because, and so forth and so on. And as we get to this point of the presentation, there's a bifurcation in my mind, trying to understand what it is that we're going to be laying out as what we offer to work backwards. I just think, as I said, we need to address pretty much up front and in the business plan, because depending on which decision is made, then everything else is going to flow from that point backwards.
Sounds like you're saying we feature computer science.
It sounds that way.
You're featuring the computer science school and its graduates and its capabilities. And business.
And business is one of the ones you highlighted. I mean, I sort of see two attractions. I mean, I think a lot of the high-tech businesses will be run here by the connectivity, by the business school, but we do have other things attracting them. I think in the pure research, we may also attract them with regard to agriculture and so forth. But, we may get internet businesses or ones with connectivity, and once they're here, say, by the way, we're going to use you to improve, to work closely with students and faculty, and maybe make sure that next year that's top of your basis. Others may be brought on initially by the existence of the strong departments and branch out. So may have different hopes for different types of technology.
Just going back to what you said first about university first, and myself, I had a little problem with that also because of what's out there in the world, in the marketplace today. You must have some kind of a mix because, university first, may not attract those other companies out there, those cottage industry companies who wants to come here to do business. I mean, they want to come here too, so you still have to do a real estate thing. I mean, you just can't just totally get away from it because the other companies out there you want to attract them. And Global Coastal showed us the huge hub connectivity out there, and here we're talking about, maybe just a finite amount of companies coming here because university first. You still need to put it out there to track what you can get, really. And not just university, I'm having a little bit of problem with that.
Another strength that we have, and relates to what you're saying, another strength that we have is that we are becoming increasingly successful in attracting federal grants to do research. And we are most successful in the area of science, math, engineering, and technology. So we obviously developing that capability, and within that capability, it's expected that we'll have businesses and so forth that our students can do interns. They can do interns there. They can learn and they can contribute, and the same thing for faculty. So we're developing that research capability in those areas that have the potential to support the kinds of businesses that we might, incubators and so forth, that we might locate. And of course, as I said, with business too, we've got a lot of students now. In fact, I was speaking to a cousin recently, and he said, I'm interested in computer science, but I like arts too, and I want to find some way to combine my computer science in terms of generating ideas and doing things, arts and sculpture and whatnot. A lot of these young folks now are not as discipline-driven as we were. They're thinking about doing lots of things. If I'm going to be a math major, I might also convert it into a business, generate some algorithms that I can patent those algorithms and stuff. There's all this kind of stuff. Spoke to a young lady. She said, I'm going to graduate school. What are you? I'm thinking about getting into something where I can generate these algorithms, and now you can, once you generate the right algorithm, you can make a lot of money because of intellectual property. So you have this sort of thing where scientists are thinking of like business people now, that sort of thing. And it's happening here at our university.
In this discussion, it seems to me that there's some combination of a push-pull concept. It's probably what we're going to have to do.
I agree.
Push-pull. That is to say, we have the pull in terms of what our stars, that represents the pull in terms of the attraction. But we may have some pushing in terms of the university being pushed into certain, given the certain selectivity, if you will. We have to be selective about whom we go after. But there may be some pushing in terms of steering the university budget into certain areas of development for higher education that we might not otherwise be involved in without that particular push. So,
one of the things
This can be said inside this room very safely. You do have a real estate deal. You must clothe it in the university environment. We all of a sudden decided that a large company who wanted to give us $2 million worth of software for the College of Business was an excellent university partner. I'll get around to asking them about their research. But that's still somebody I wanted in my park, and so did the president.
Precisely, yeah, okay.
I'm talking not necessarily of the King's new clothing, but I'm talking about you do have a very nice piece of property, you do have good location, you do have a lot of positive things, but it is the clothing that appears to the outside world that's most important to get this done. And that university is a new shield to do that.
I think also on the heels of that comment, I reminded of Dr. Kent's opening remarks relative to the power of an idea whose time has come. And I think it's also important that what the stars are today at the university are not necessarily what the stars of tomorrow could be. And so it might be important, and the business plan usually starts with a goal or an objective, to determine what you want this to look like at the end of the tunnel. And maybe it's not a star today, and maybe you need to partner with some other institutions that are stars in those respective areas until you start fostering your own internal growth in those disciplines. But I think it's important to pick your spot, or spots in this case, and say this is what the package is that we're then going to go out, wrapped around the real estate deal. Whatever that frosting is, or that cloak, or what have you, needs to be determined at step one. And I think it's got to be related to bandwidth, because that's what the new economy is.
I think everything has been in place before, the university and everybody that's here as part of the community. The only thing that hasn't been here before was Global Crossing. And the amount of bandwidth they're bringing, that is what makes this even a viable event, is the fact that we're getting all this bandwidth. And I think that is what needs to be at the center of our attention. And then if the university then can further develop their computer science, their business, their research, their federal programs, behind that, that falls in after utilization of this bandwidth to get people here.
Another point, just to go back, don't be too much of a slave, having focused on the business plan, don't be too much of a slave to it. Because as Scott said, if you looked at his 93 business plan, that's been blown out of the water. I mean, it's all marketing. You want to draw them off to the flame. That's what you're trying to do. And don't short sell your agricultural aspects of it. I was taken to I can't remember the name of it in Scandinavia, but it's the Oslo Ag and Tech University in Norway, where they did a joint venture in their version of an incubator with Microsoft to develop fish processing plants that are totally robotic, where they can maximize the amount of fish meat that gets cut up, wrapped, and a lot more sanitary process. That software is worth a bloody fortune to both parties, and it relates to agriculture. So don't sell it short. Someone will see all those fields and those mangoes and everything else and say, wait a minute, we've got a software application.
That's why the authority has the authority to determine what a business purpose is.
Right.
So that it's not a frozen piece of legislation. The authority can interpret what is our purpose in this park with this particular client.
It sounds like if we're prioritizing things, it sounds like this business plan and the ability to present that good business plan to legislators is really important, along with legislation you're drafting.
And to our board of trustees. It is really at the center of what it is. We have to be involved.
But if you listen to Scott, it's always a work in progress.
Precisely. Except we have to free something in time right now going forward. At least for some period of time. We have to free something in time going forward with some vision of what, however short a horizon that vision might be. Yes,
You just made the point I was going to raise, is you have to start with the goal or objective. The plan is how you get there, but there needs to be a real clear goal. So the way I look at it is, here's your goal, and here at the end of some time certain, here it is. This is what it looks like when it's complete. The business plan is what is the roadmap between those 2 points, and I'm not certain that the objective or the goal is drilled down enough at this point. And I think that has to be the first step, is to drill down what you want this to look like at the end of the tunnel. And then I do agree the business plan is a work in process.
Well, let's talk about that some more so we can drill down on the goal, so we can be a lot clearer when we leave this afternoon. Because tomorrow morning we want to spend some more time about going to the next step. We want this afternoon at least to leave with this drill down sense. Could you speak to that a little more?
Well, I just hear a lot of good ideas, and in my mind, it might just be my mental processing that, I'm hearing some really good ideas about aquaculture, and what I've heard about the hydroponics and the aquaculture. That seems to me to be something that this is a perfect place in the world that people would naturally gravitate towards, and there's some marine biology and other things that I've always heard about with the university here. That seems to me to make logical sense. The fact that it's a land-grant university, that you've had a lot of luck lately getting grants, that to me seems like another powerful piece to somebody out there. I'm not sure I knowledgeable enough about what all that means, but it just sounds like something of value to some type of company. I don't know what that is. I think of like a Monsanto when I think of agriculture or agribusiness, and I don't know if that, right, Archer Daniels, Midland, what have you. So that seems to be something. The fact that Global Crossing has got a point of presence now with a lot of bandwidth seems to me to represent another opportunity. And then my mind immediately goes and says, well, there's probably a lot of other places in the U.S. that have that same kind of connectivity. Correct me if I'm mistaken. So I keep, these are just parts of the puzzle, and I think I don't have all the answers. So I think I have some questions, and maybe together we can address some of those issues.
I think what we're doing is we're finally, from a connectivity standpoint, we're finally bringing in electricity to the university kind of a thing. All the other universities already have that connectivity in the U.S. Not so much the Caribbean or South America, but in the U.S. So we're basically you're competing with those other universities to for what for utilizing the resources here, the talents of the university. One of the ways to do that is through the business park. So it's a matter of, okay, me too. We've got the bandwidth connectivity now. We've got everything that it takes. Here are the other benefits. Here's why you should consider working with our university. I think that's what needs to come up.
That's the summary that puts it together. Somebody said once that the printing press was not called the printing press age. It enabled the Industrial Revolution. E-business does not enable much of its own that's going to be long-sustaining, but it allows business-to-business improvements in productivity and commerce. So how does interconnectivity enhance what the university has to offer? Because now you've got the connectivity that allows you to do software development for agriculture or software development for science, better learning, whatever it happens to be. Remember that e-business in itself is not the business. It is the enhancer or the enabler. It's a tool. Short-term investments cast aside.
So you're back to the competitive advantage.
Yes.
Again, is, if I'm understanding Rick correctly, it's a great equalizer. Now, the UVI has access to the same pipe that MIT or...
Well, before you were excluded from playing in those markets, if you will, or being in those markets. Now you're no longer excluded. So what is it you have to sell the world now that you can do everything else that every university in the United States can do on the mainland? What is it now that you have to sell them? You don't have to sell them this bandwidth because they've all got that.
Well, we have the benefit of being American and offshore at the same time.
Good.
That's a tremendous benefit.
Tax benefits.
That's
If
what I mean by
the
tax
entrepreneur
benefits.
lives here, they pay tax at 4% rate if they're the one in 20 frogs.
This benefits matrix needs to
It's a benefit of being American, the protections of America
With the
tax benefits.
Exactly.
But let's see to the extent that focus on the goal. I think that's about what Steve was saying. The question is, what are we really trying to do? Who are we really trying to target?
Well, we're going to talk about goals. There are a lot of different. We have each audience will have its own goals as they relate to this particular project. Which goals are you talking? Whose goals are you talking about?
Well, I think when I'm looking up at the key actions going forward, and I'm just kind of taking the coattails of Bill's comment relative to the business plan comes first. My familiarity with business plans starts with what are you trying to accomplish? And then the rest of the plan gets built. And so I guess again, inside this room, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here? And understanding that we will feature different portions of that to different stakeholders or potential audiences. But what is it really, this is the most difficult part, is to take everything you've been talking about and filtrate it down to one or two sentences or a paragraph that capture the essence of the goals and objectives.
Yeah, let me give you a stab at what I see the goal would be. And then we have some multifaceted goals. The first, of course, is this project will enhance the university's mission. No question about it. It will enhance the university's mission by doing several things. It will strengthen the instructional arm of the university.
Okay, so that's something I can sink my teeth into. Strengthen.
Okay, it will strengthen the instructional arm of the university. It will strengthen the research arm of the university.
And it will strengthen the public. See, our university has a tripartite mission because we're land grant: instruction, research, and service. It will strengthen the instructional arm because the businesses that will become a part of this industrial, of this research and business park will provide instructional opportunities for our students and for our faculty, research opportunities, and it will strengthen also the service mission of the university because the community will be better served by the diversification of the economy and the expansion of the economy. So the goal is to enhance the mission by strengthening the three sub-missions, if you want to think of it. If you want to think of it that way. Instructional arm, the research arm, and the community service arm. And it's the only approach that I can think of as president right now that can achieve all three objectives at the same time in such a significant way.
You did not look over my shoulder. I've got in front of me the University of Arizona Science and Technology Park. Philosophy. The purpose of the park is to support the mission of the University of Arizona in education, research, and public service. The park is a logical extension of the university's land grant mission. The park is an essential element in the university's effort for a research university. The park's primary purpose is not to generate revenue for the university. The park is not a real estate deal. University of Arizona, 1.2 million square feet. You didn't say that. You hit it right on the head.
Well, I also said the instruction and the service because of the three.
Education, research, and public service. That's what they say is number one.
That's great. So then my mind next clicks forward to then, how are we going to do that in each one of these three bullet points? And then the business plan will follow. So if I can, if we're going to strengthen the instructional opportunities, how are we going to do that?
Well, I think what you have to do is a lot of folks now, when they think about the university, they think of it as a learning environment. Okay? Don't think necessarily of being in the classroom. You think of the environment in which students learn. And the park provides an excellent opportunity to broaden the learning environment to students, of the faculty, indeed of everybody that's part of the university. Because the park is seen as an extension of the university. Even though we, understandably, folks just can't move in and out of the parks any more than you can just move in and out of the music department, for example, and take a course. You know, I mean, there are natural barriers in the university environment for anybody with regards to anything that's offered there, learning environments. But it expands the learning environment in the most meaningful way as we move into the 21st century for students in terms of learning, instruction, in terms of capacity to research, and for the university in terms of the services they can provide to this community right now, because the biggest problem we have is economic stagnation.
The University of Delaware calls their incubator project a real-world laboratory, meaning it's not the ivory tower, it's not a clinical trial. This is, you're out there in the real world, you know, if you're a student or a graduate, in commerce, in capitalism, trying to make theoretical ideas work, trying to take it from an idea to reality. And that's most students in today's environment don't have that opportunity. So you're giving up a real world opportunity that they otherwise would not have.
Real world what?
They call it a real world laboratory, but it's a real world opportunity.
In a sense, it's really the best lab. A lot of times the experiments we did there weren't necessarily what you do outside world, necessarily the best reinforcement for what you're learning. Whereas these research parks, research and business parks, and the combination of the research and the business is really a great leap forward for the learning environment.
So if we follow up with the goals or objectives, let's pick a point in time, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and say, what will this look like? Because I think if we have those 3 legs of the table, so to speak, of what you're trying to accomplish, then we have a picture of wave your magic wand and say, this is what it will look like 3 years hence. Then I think the rest can be done. As far as
I'll tell you what I'd like it to look like. I'd like it to look like this. I'd like it to look a situation where I can, let me give you an example. Recently, a number of our students went to a student research conference in the United States. And our students won first prize in physics, in math, and in computer science. We don't even have a physics major. We have a gentleman who won a Pulitzer Prize, one of our graduates in public service journalism. We don't even have a journalism major. We have a journalism concentration in a humanities major. We have a physics sort of minor in a chemistry major. He won the physics prize at this conference. And we have a guy in marine biology who won the second prize of all of these folks who came from other schools, minority schools, HBCUs in the United States. What I'd like to see in 3 to 5 years is that I can have a parade of students and faculty members who can give testimony as to what they learned and the research in this park, the faculty, what they learned and the research in the park, and then I want a testimony from the private sector, from the Chamber of Commerce, and from the government who said what this park has done to expand the economy of the Virgin Islands. And that's all those are my milestones. If I can get those milestones, then we've done it. Now that may not be my kind of, I mean, that's how I'm thinking. Yeah. Put them up there. See, I can put that stuff up on the wall. I can put it in on my website for prospective students and for prospective folks who want to come to the park. I'd like a statement of profitability too for the tenants, you know.
Okay.
But I don't want to hog the conversation though. I think I've said enough.
Well, you're the president, you can do
You're
it.
the president. Big thing is we can't go forward without clearly defining the goals, and then we identify the issues. So we have the other 2 prongs. We have the research prong and the public service prong. So we have to go through the same exercise with that. At least get a first cut.
Right.
You have to get a first cut on the other 2. We got a first cut on the first one, which is instruction. Question is research. What are research goals? And what would we like research to be like? You know, what is our vision of research 3 years from now?
How will the university be transformed?
My
What
vision
specifically?
of research, not only in terms of testimony, but I'd like to see some intellectual property. We'd like to start thinking of generating some intellectual property. Yeah, technology transfer. You know, that I think is going to be one of the measures of the success of this research and business park.
Which means you generate first corporate and federal grants that allow you to develop that technology for transfer.
Well, as I said, we already get to, yeah.
That's part of the goal. Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to welcome a latecomer to our meeting. I'm sure it's because of her schedule and so on. From a possible corporate partner in the future. I don't want to get involved in Virgin Islands politics, but I personally hope they will become a corporate partner in the Virgin Islands. That's Andrea Crawford.
It's Andrea Cranford.
Cranford, okay, that's close. From the Southern Energy?
Southern Energy.
And you're with the economic development
Yes,
arm
I
of
am.
the company. Well, welcome. I'm glad you could make it. And I know you're going to be doing some catching up. But the presentation that you missed is contained in your packet in hard copy.
Thank you.
Okay? Thanks. I just thought I wanted.
No problem. Yeah.
If I could underscore how important she is before we start throwing flowers and roses. The University of Wisconsin Madison Research Park is sponsored by Madison Gas and Electric. That is their corporate underwriter for the park. Because Gas and Electric understands that economic growth means customers. And it's something that Duke Power Company understands. It's something that the major forward-thinking companies really get a part and handle on, as do people like in the states, Bell South and others you would expect who would profit from growth. But the power companies, and if that transitions, as I understand it, hopes to transition on the island, would have a major interest in a research park.
Okay, research. Steve, you got what Dr. Ken said in terms of at least a first step?
Yep. And
Okay.
maybe just a little bit on the third leg, on the service and the diversification. 3 to 5 years from now, what does it look like?
Public service. Okay.
Well, I think there's several elements of public service. I mean, the one that I mentioned that, we need to be able to demonstrate that that the economy of the Virgin Islands can diversify into the 21st century with 21st century businesses. And I'm saying this because we are a culture in which you have to show people. I mean, at a university, we have to show them a lot of things because they don't believe until they see, So we've got to be able to demonstrate through the success of some 21st century technology, knowledge businesses, incubators that, like you say, all the frogs aren't going to turn out to be princes, but we want to have at least one prince, or one prince in the making. That this is viable, because once it's recognized that this is viable, you get more and more support from the government, and it may even make a difference in terms of who's elected to the legislature. It may make a difference in terms of changing the culture to become more business friendly. You've got to do some things to say, when you're business friendly, it works and you get some returns. But there's another element of another service, another element of the community service that isn't apparent, but that I think will be possible in 3 to 5 years. And that is that we'll have an impact on the elementary and secondary schools. Because once the elementary and secondary schools, the principals and the teachers and the parents understand the benefits to individuals' personal as well as professional goals that can be achieved as a result of becoming connected and becoming computer literate and things of that sort. I think it may make a difference in terms of the teaching of science and math and computer science on elementary and secondary schools, because that's a real problem. The students that we get, we have to remediate. Even some of those that go ahead and do very well and become maybe doctors and lawyers and even PhDs, because the high schools, the elementary and high schools do such a poor job. These students are not as prepared. And so a lot of our students are underperforming. And I believe that this park, within 3 to 5 years, can start to have an impact, a positive impact on the school system in the Virgin Islands. And down the road can really make a big difference. Now that may just be a delusion on my part. But I believe that once folks start to see what's at the end of the road, if you pay some time and attention to these academic subjects, and perhaps some of the tenants in the parks might help us with that too, that we'll start to turn the corner on that, and the whole quality will start to turn the corner, and the whole quality of life. It takes a while, but you have to start with something. And down the road, I think the whole society can be transformed.
I think just your comment relative to delusion, I think that it starts with the leadership at a university with someone like yourself to articulate the vision. And then, as Voltaire said, no problem can stand the assault of sustained thought. So the team can then take the direction from your vision and work out what are the obstacles and what are the solutions to each obstacle. And if everyone does their job, the vision becomes a reality. So I think it's very helpful to get that first color on the palette, so to speak, and then start working.